Hello and welcome to the ISC² Roundtable. Today's webinar is a lunch and learn specifically aimed at cybersecurity in the computing science curriculum for UK universities, and of course will be of interest to any members and non-members who are joining us who want to understand how computing science curricula are changing and how cybersecurity is becoming much more of a mandatory component within those curricula. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Professor Alastair, Dr. Nick Savage and Professor Howard Chivers, and my name is Adrian Davis. I'm the Managing Director for ISC² in EMEA, and I've been working with these gentlemen and many others over the last couple of years on this topic. So before we hear from our eminent guests, a quick word about ISC² to put us into context, and a quick word about where we are and where we've come from. So ISC² is the world's largest professional body for information security, numbering around about 120,000 and about 20,000 or so in EMEA. One of our key visions and missions is to educate. And it's not just about educating a small elite band of certification holders. It's about educating society, about educating individuals and organizations who use technology, so we can use technology much more safely, much more securely, and reap the benefits of the upcoming digital economy and our increasing reliance on IT and technology in general. And these webinars, the series that ISC² run, and this particular webinar are aimed at a non-ISC² audience in some ways, because we really want to help everybody really know more about cybersecurity, learn more about cybersecurity, and indeed educate and teach cybersecurity in a more detailed, in a more inclusive way. So, moving on, what we've got planned to cover today is our journey, where we've come from, where we are today, the piece about accreditation. We have a case study. We have two case studies about how cybersecurity has been integrated into computing science and related curricula, and we're also going to cover some resources that are available to academics, non-academics, other education institutions, for use in teaching cybersecurity, and we have a particular project that we'll be covering as well. So let's just go back to a couple of years ago when ISC² and the Council of Professors and Heads of Computing got together and said, there's something not quite right here, because computing science graduates at the time aren't getting the employment that we think they should. Employers are saying that they're not coming out of universities with the skills that are required. And everybody was pointing fingers and talking past each other. And one of the things that we sat down with as a group, and that's ISC² and CPHC, was really how can we help each other and stop this finger pointing and this talking past each other. And a lot of it, certainly in the arena of cybersecurity, was the fact that it wasn't necessarily explained to students why cybersecurity was important. The case wasn't being made that cybersecurity was something that employers valued, and although many curricula covered really good and interesting cybersecurity material, they tend to cover the more sort of topical, cool stuff rather than necessarily some of the concepts that employers were looking for. So to avoid all that, we actually ran a series of roundtables, and we worked very closely right across the board with government, academic, and industry to produce the principles and learning outcomes, which are a resource designed to be used by academics mainly to help integrate and enhance. And I think that's a key word there. It's not teaching academics or telling academics how to teach cybersecurity. It's to enhance what's already there. And it's also there to help accreditors ensure that cybersecurity is being taught in degree courses and is being taught to a minimum level. There's a whole set of guidance and resources in there, and if you haven't seen this document and you haven't downloaded it, go onto the CPHC website, type in the titles, Cybersecurity Principles and Learning Outcomes, and you can download it, or you can do exactly the same on the ISC² website. We are currently looking at enhancing the learning outcomes in this document, so version 1.2, I believe, should be out in the near future, and we're learning as we go along how to improve the document, the learning outcomes, and so on going forwards. So basically there are, as you can see on your screen now, a number of themes and core concepts. It's all driven about information. Information security, the clue is in the title, it's about protecting information, and we want to provide a firm basis on what information is, which naturally comes as part of computing science courses, but how you can then protect it, the risks to information, the threats and attacks that can be used to get to information via systems or networks, and then we build on from there, looking at how you can build cybersecurity into networks, into systems through careful design, through testing. You can make sure it's actually been built in correctly, and then we look at how you can manage cybersecurity in the context of an organization. So the idea is that the document is not a set of mandatory laboratories or a set of mandatory lectures you have to give. It is a high-level approach that outlines the principles that we believe should be taught across a computing science degree, or as a standalone cybersecurity module. The idea is here that cybersecurity can be woven in as part of the concepts taught across a degree, rather than being treated as being something separate. And we'll hear how some of the approaches have taken these principles and done that weaving in a minute. So basically, why is there such a demand? Why are we looking at this problem? Globally and in the EU, we reckon globally there's about a 1.5 million shortfall between the jobs that need to be filled in cybersecurity and individuals who are capable of filling them. In EMEA, it comes out around about 300, 400,000 at a minimum. And most of the people that we talk to, both ISC² members and non-members, say there aren't enough InfoSec people out there, and there aren't enough people out there already. And if we can build cybersecurity into education, then we can start to address that pipeline problem. And when we look at it, when we actually look at what we have at the moment and what we need, as you can see here, most of the job functions that are required are information security professional, closely followed by IT professionals with a knowledge of security, or indeed people who can turn their hands to both. They're the top three on the left of the graph as we can see it now. And we must remember that security isn't just one thing. It's not just people in hoodies who hack computers. It is far, far more diverse than that, and it covers many, many things. As we can see here, it covers everything from the services industry through space, to online trade, to transport, and of course things like autonomous cars, autonomous planes are really now hitting the headlines, right the way through to even the boring utilities that provide the electricity and the water and the gas that we all need to live off. And as you can see, information security covers a whole range of topics, from policies and standards through audit and review to awareness and communication, right down to things like business continuity. And one of the things that we hope that the curriculum and the principles will bring out is this richness of potential career paths, this richness of areas in which IT and information security can be brought to bear together. So that's enough of where we are, where we've come from, and some of the reasoning behind doing the CCHC work. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Alastair, who I know through both the CPHC and the BCS, and he's going to explain more about the journey towards accreditation, and also a little bit about how Sunderland have started to take the principles and turn them into practice. So Alastair, welcome. And
thank you, Adrian.
Excellent. I turn it over to you for the next sort of 10-15 minutes.
Thanks very much. Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. My name's Alastair. I'm head of department in computing engineering technology. Although we have managed to become a faculty of computing over the summer, which is quite interesting. I'm also chair of the BCS's academic accreditation committee, and hence opportunity to talk a little bit about the BCS guidelines before I share with you what we've done at Sunderland in trying to embed cybersecurity into our curriculum. So if I can start with the BCS, there have been a number of changes around the academic accreditation criteria over the last few years, but one of the major ones has been as a result of the work that Adrian has talked about through the community with the ISC squared, CPHC, a number of employers and academics, and really raising the importance of cybersecurity. And one of the ways to raise the importance of cybersecurity in the curriculum is to have it as one of the explicit criteria in the BCS accreditation, assuming that HEIs are interested in getting BCS accreditation. And so you can see on the slide there, and for those of you who are going through BCS accreditation in the not too distant future, my institution is going through BCS accreditation in 2017, so I'm not immune to this. There are a number of things that the BCS panels will be looking for, and again that reflects on the breadth of the cybersecurity domain that Adrian has already talked about. So things like information and risk, threats and attacks, cybersecurity architecture, systems security and the related products, and indeed the cybersecurity management, the policies and procedures, etc. Around that are all things that the BCS will look at and talk to providing teams about. Now these don't have to be modules on their own, standalone. They can be embedded in other subject areas like databases or programming or whatever. But as you'll see when I move on to the Sunderland side of things, we've kind of taken a hybrid approach. And the way, when you go through the BCS accreditation and the preparation for the BCS accreditation, the way to show this is using the BCS core module mappings. And what we've got here is the modules that you would address. Unfortunately, some of it's been cut off on the slide, but if you're doing a BCS accreditation, you'll see that this is a key aspect of things. And then you go down the various criteria, and you indicate and illustrate where things are covered. All the BCS panels are very switched on to this, and it is very likely that any panel will talk to HI providers about how they are addressing cybersecurity in their curriculum, both in terms of how it's taught, how students learn about it, so the aspects around the pedagogy, but also where it's assessed and how it's assessed. Okay, if people are moving to BCS accreditation this year, then I'm very happy to take any questions or queries with my BCS hat on offline. So feel free to contact me. It's also worth talking to the BCS, and Maxine Leslie will help you with any queries, or colleagues in the education department at the BCS will help with any queries we've got there. So if I can move to what we did at Sunderland, and some of you may have heard something similar around the workshops that we all participated in at Easter time this year, and at Sunderland we really bought into the opportunities afforded by cybersecurity, and they mapped very nicely into a number of drivers that we are measured on in our university and indeed externally. So we looked at the output from the CPHC squared workshops and took the document that Adrian alluded to earlier on, and went through that with a fine-tooth comb and said, well, okay, what are we doing here and what do we need to add in to update our curriculum. We looked at the employability opportunities and the skills gap for our graduates, and talked to our industrial advisory board and colleagues in various industrial consortia that we're involved in, and looked to see what they were looking for in terms of graduates. I can't remember if it was an Adrian slide, but something like 57% of employers feel that they can't get graduates with the cybersecurity knowledge that they need. Obviously, the BCS accreditation was part of our thinking, and as I say, we're going for accreditation this year, so it's important that we looked at that as a driver. We thought very carefully about doing an undergraduate degree in cybersecurity, and kicked off a piece of market research to really try and understand how young people in schools in particular, not really looking at the mature entry route at this point, but thinking about what they understood about cybersecurity. And the outcome of that was we were going to include it in our current computer science and related degree disciplines, but not at this point in time go for an undergraduate cybersecurity. We're in the throes of putting forward a master's in cybersecurity, but that's a different story. And then, of course, linked in with student employability, and of course we'll go back to where we started the whole project with the concern that computer science students weren't hitting the employability targets that other disciplines were managing to achieve. We went through our periodic review in 2015, which was actually quite nice timing. It gave us the opportunity to think about the principles identified from the workshops. We helped us look at where we were in terms of current cybersecurity provision. It tended to be in networking and database activities, but it also gave us the opportunity to look at our learning outcomes and be very, very specific, and later on I'll show you the specific learning outcomes that we addressed, to put in explicitly that we were going to look at cybersecurity at program level, and then tying that in with our module learning outcomes. And rather than it being, yeah, of course cybersecurity is something that everybody covers, we very definitely said this is something that we are going to put on the outside of the tin, and saying cybersecurity is one of the main themes that all our students will address, whatever flavour of computing they're looking at. So we looked at where we could do this, and we took every module and to a greater or lesser extent put cybersecurity in place. The two main areas that we addressed as part of the overall curriculum were our computing fundamentals module in year one. So these are all the sort of building blocks that students have around computer systems, networking, programming, etc., and put cybersecurity smack bang in the middle of that. And then our major software development project, a team working project in the second year, which is a third of the curriculum, had cybersecurity as one of the key themes in there. One of the things that came out of the workshops that we did over Easter was looking at the interpersonal skills that students develop in that software development module. And I think it was in Edinburgh, one of the guys said, and how do we get students to work securely in groups? And I came back down from that workshop, and the poor module leader sort of tried to hide when I said, we need to get the students to think about how they are communicating securely, so what it means if they're going to put shared documents in Dropbox, etc., etc. So that's been a very, very positive thing. We also think about where that is in programming, and so looking at things like defensive programming, for example. Those modules that looked at using cybersecurity, we built on, so programming, databases, networking, etc., web modules, mobile development, really looked at what cybersecurity meant and the implications of cybersecurity in thinking about that. We also managed to link our cybersecurity into the social and ethical side of things, so it's the societal impact of cybersecurity, or indeed the societal impact of lack of cybersecurity, has been a key theme in what we've been looking at in our implementation. It's currently, we also put in a specialist module in the final year. It ran for the first time last year, and I'll speak very briefly about that in a second. Core to computer science, computer forensics, network computing, and an optional module on our other undergraduate programs. It ran in second semester. The students, the performance was very good, as you might expect with students who got to the final year. But one of the things that came back was, this is great. I wish we could have had a degree in cybersecurity, and very certainly we wish we could have done cybersecurity in the first semester of our final year. So that was very gratifying to get that positive feedback, but also made us think about how and where we put our main cybersecurity provisions. So it's an ongoing developing arena. Very aware of time before I hand over to Nick. Here are the programme learning outcomes that we put in place across our undergraduate suite of students, so that cybersecurity is in there at stage 1, stage 2, and as a specialism in stage 3, so that the students really get an understanding of what security means across all of the domains of the computing families. The final year module I mentioned a second ago, we have at Sunderland we have an expectation that there are 4 learning outcomes, which is why we've put it in this structure, split down into knowledge and skills. These kind of reflect the building blocks around cybersecurity and how that can be looked at from a theoretical perspective, but also how it can be applied across the piece. We actually assess this in a number of ways, but effectively both in a theoretical paper, but also in an applied practical assessment where they build as secure systems with various different features associated with it. So to conclude my part of the presentation today, the feedback from the students has been positive. It looks, and it's difficult to get a feel for it at this point in time before our daily indicators come into play, but certainly anecdotally, the employability indicators look to be positive, and part of that is a result of cybersecurity. We are going into the process now of annual programme monitoring, so we're evaluating what that means and getting the feedback from our students and comparing across the piece. It will be interesting to see what the BCS think of our approach when they come in 2017. But this model that I've tried to summarise for you, it's only one of the ways that we can do this. It's not necessarily the correct answer. It's working for us at the moment. We will, of course, review it and amend it. But I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Nick Savage, who at Portsmouth have done some things slightly differently. Nick, over to you.
Well, hi. Thank you very much, Alastair. And hello to everybody. My name is Nick Savage. I'm the Head of School of Computing at the University of Portsmouth. And I just want to follow on a few things that we've done here at the university, attempting to integrate the key themes that Adrian spoke about at the very start of the presentation today. I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about the background behind where we were coming from. We're very fortunate to have a new Vice-Chancellor and with a new Vice Chancellor came a new university vision that identified security and risk as a significant theme across the university, both for teaching and research. And we're very fortunate within the School of Computing to have some staff that already had an interest in cybersecurity. So the seeds were sort of already there for me to advise that we integrate these themes as much as possible into our undergraduate degree programs. We have 6 undergraduate degrees. So you'll see there that we have bachelors in computer science, computing, software engineering, and then specialist degree programs in web technologies, forensic computing, and business information systems. And from the point of view of attempting to integrate these cybersecurity themes into our undergraduate programs, we have a little bit of a constraint in terms of the size of our undergraduate units. So we run 20 credit units. We also run units that are by and large, so all of our undergraduate units are full year-long units. So when I first introduced this to our course leaders, when the standard was released last June, my course leaders came back and said, well, we already have a very full curriculum and it's very difficult to add more. And therefore we took the approach to say, okay, so what are we currently doing and how can we integrate the requirements that are now there in the BCS? How can we integrate those requirements into our curriculum? So one of the things that we did, of course, is firstly to look at what we've currently got. So we've taken the idea we're going to integrate these. We need to review what we're currently teaching, what our curricula currently is, what things we're engaging students with, and how can we engage these students in a way that reinforces the themes and the core concepts of cybersecurity. So we went through this process to start with. We do, as you have noticed, we have a degree program on forensic computing. So we do already have some units that have a specialism in security. And we also had a number of units that had security aspects reflected in their learning outcomes, or their learning outcomes could be further enhanced by including security aspects. And I actually had a few staff say, well, I don't really want to do any security. But then once we discussed, well, how they could be integrated into their curriculum. So actually this was just doing things properly. So I tend to take that approach when looking to integrate this into our undergraduate programs. When meeting with my course leaders, there was a little bit of a concern that by integrating these requirements into our existing curriculum, we run the risk that they just disappear from the teaching material that our students are engaged with. And so we felt that we needed closer management of unit content, which is one of the things that we're looking to do now. We already have quality processes in place at the university. Having been to a number of the workshops, I've realised that the University of Portsmouth has slightly less robust quality processes than other universities. Other universities appear to be very, very strict in terms of processes for change. We certainly feel that we need slightly closer management of our unit content to ensure that any cybersecurity that's integrated doesn't sort of fizzle out or disappear. So our approach was to integrate out. We don't actually have a BCS visit until academic year 18-19, so we're sort of quite slow and steady, I suppose you could say, in our approach. We actually started last year in September 2015, and we have a first-year unit that is taken by all of our undergraduate programs. So it was very easy to target this unit, and this unit we targeted to include material on information and risk. We felt that it was appropriate for students to appreciate how information that is accessible via web-based interfaces in any way may be at risk by putting them on a publicly accessible machine. And we're very fortunate that this academic year, and as I'm sure in future academic years, there will be an example that is quite relevant and timely as the year goes by. TalkTalk was one this year. And then September 2016, we're integrating the cybersecurity, architecture and operations, and secure systems and products themes, particularly into two of our units. Now, one of them is our software engineering unit, which is a group project unit. And as Alastair said earlier, there's the comment about, well, how do you include interpersonal skills? That's exactly what we want to do in our group project. So I've also spoken to the unit coordinator and said, look, this is definitely something that we want to have in our unit. So our students appreciate that they have to act, that they have to use systems in a secure manner, they have to protect the information associated with their ideas. And we're also integrating that into our usability and design unit. And then when we looked at the themes and core concepts, the theme which is dealing with threats and attacks, which historically is quite easy, it's quite fun to introduce students to, because it tends to be, this is how you get unauthorized access to a computer system, these are the sort of people who may be doing this, this is a mechanism that can be used, and here's how to protect against it. That is already covered in some of our level 6 units, and what we found is the cybersecurity management is actually something that we didn't feel was covered particularly well in our curriculum. So we have actually also developed a new unit on security management, which will be for our level 6 units, and that unit will start proper in September 2017. So on my next slide, I'd just like to talk about a few of the issues that I faced as a head in attempting to convince everybody that this is a fantastic idea. And I just, as a side, I can say when we get together every now and then, I hope my Vice Chancellor isn't listening, in the pub, and every Friday saying, one of my members of staff turned to me and said, you do realise that I don't really care about security. That was quite a challenge to deal with. But we do at the moment. We have two very enthusiastic lecturers, and that enthusiasm is starting to spread. So my colleague who turned to me and said, we do realise I'm not interested, has now actually developed some libraries for a student to use so that they're able to authenticate themselves correctly using some of the web-based resources that he has. I'm also looking to expand the knowledge base within the school using the ISC academic program. So we're just starting to roll that out this year. And one of the things that I have done this year is whenever advertising for new posts, I've actually written in to the advert the expectation of security knowledge, depending on the particular domain of the member of staff that I'm looking to recruit. There's been some interesting things happen. When we've gone through the process of expanding teaching teams with my two very enthusiastic lecturers, we've run into difficulties in terms of timetabling and scheduling. And I don't imagine that there's any university that doesn't have any problems with timetabling and scheduling, but unfortunately expanding teaching teams compounds that problem. So that's certainly something to be aware of when looking at how to integrate it, and looking at what staff you wish to use in order to cover the security aspects you're looking to integrate into any of your current undergraduate modules. And a slightly odd thing, my enthusiastic lecturers dealt with information and risk in our first year unit, and they were particularly excited to be covering this material, and that excitement actually drove some students wishing to transfer to more security focused degrees. So I had requests to transfer to our forensic computing degree from students that are currently enrolled on computer science. And from a resourcing point of view, my specialist degree programs are much smaller, and that's not something that I'd particularly wish to happen. But that was an interesting side effect. Now, after having gone through this, as a team, we've been discussing what we can produce or what we can draw attention to that is going to help other people go through this process. And there are a number of resources that already exist. There really are a lot, and some can be directly dropped into units. So it's very easy to direct lecturers to particular URLs and say, okay, there's some VMs of virtual machines that already exist here that pretty much cover exactly what you're looking to integrate into your module. So please go and have a look at that. Others need a little bit of adaptation in order to fulfill the requirements of the unit or module, and also be balanced with the teaching specialism as a lecturer that's taking it. I've just indicated a few here. There are some labs that are sort of built already for university that have been developed. There's lots of background reading, of course, available at the reading room on SAND. And the IEEE have developed some live virtual machines that I think are actually really good to have a play with. And there's a number of downloadable VMs available from ITSEC Games. We actually have a fairly large document that I'm hoping after today's webinar will be shared with everybody. To perhaps seed a community where we can sort of review, share knowledge about resources that already exist, and make our education of students in this particularly important domain better. And that leads me quite nicely on to the next presenter. So if I could pass over to Howard. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I hope I've managed to turn this computer off mute. Somebody shout if I haven't. I'm Howard Chivers. I work at the University of York, and I lead the Masters in Cybersecurity here. I also teach technical things like malware, network security, and forensics. The project that I'm about to describe, I hope, will add to Nick's list of resources. The idea is to provide teaching aids, lab exercises for cybersecurity, and the idea is to drop them into computer science undergraduate courses. The aim is the one we've been talking about all day, which is to ensure that computer science graduates join industry with enough knowledge of security to avoid basic blunders. These slides, by the way, an updated version of one that I gave to the Council of Professors and Heads of Computing earlier on this year. And there's a video of that talk linked from this webinar. The difference between then and now is that we've moved on and actually started to deliver stuff rather than just planning. We've got some examples that you can evaluate if you're interested. Just let us know, and I'll say more about that later. So, what's this about? What problem are we trying to solve? Well, the problem that's been stated earlier on by Alastair and Adrian, which is industry perceived that computer science graduates leave university without knowing enough about security to avoid basic errors, resulting at the UK level of developing systems with easily avoidable vulnerabilities. We're not learning collectively the basic security lessons which we're repeatedly taught by friendly attackers. So the problems to solve really in course terms are how to engage students and how to help subject experts include security in their teaching. And subject experts for computer science are no different to the friends I talk to in industry who are project managers, which is if security is easy to incorporate, they'll do it, and if it's not, it's an extra they don't really want to get involved in. So engaging students isn't a huge problem. If you give them interesting and motivating material, lots of coffee, they tend to beat a path to your door. The first slide I had here was the security challenge at York, and we could barely fit enough people in that came to play with it. We happen to do this every year, and the undergraduate response is simply staggering. We learn, I guess, by doing practicals as much as by anything else, and also that they therefore tend to be the key to engagement and also sound education. And we've got some brilliant lecturers, all of us, in databases, networks, compilers, programming, what have you, in computer science, but they aren't necessarily expert in security. So what we're trying to do in this project is to give them the little extra they need to incorporate security in their modules. If you like, drop-in practicals that help them out. The next slide, that's how it works, good. One of the reasons for doing the project is that actually developing good practical exercises is expensive, both in time and cost, and also it requires specific security skills. And so what we're hoping to do is to help overcome those cost barriers for other universities at large. And the practicals we're developing are short lab experiments, typically 1-hour sessions, and typically aimed at years 1 and 2 in the, I should say English, Scotland, that's 2 and 3, I guess, years of the undergraduate syllabus. And we're not providing whole modules. The idea is to allow lecturers to maintain their own distinctive courses and teaching while providing security elements they can add. And that's got a good side effect. The side effect is that security gets integrated as far as possible into courses and not taught as an add-on. Teaching it as an add-on tends to rather carry the implication it's an add-on in the real world as well, which we're trying to get away from. So That's the objective of the project, add-on security exercises. And I should mention before I go to the next slide, there's a link at the bottom here to HEA. There are a whole series of projects funded by HEA, and the projects are intended for the UK sector, not just for individual universities. They all have a requirement to make their material available to other people. Many of those projects are aimed at master's level teaching or at teaching in cybersecurity specialist subjects as opposed to general undergraduate subjects, which is where I'm concerned. But you may find them of interest, and it's worth having a look at that link to see what's available. I'm not going to spend much time on this. I put this example into my original talk just to show that life wasn't all slideware. But it might help. What happens if you type a query into Google? Well, if you type a query into Google, it gives you hints, suggestions as you're typing as to what you mean and how that goes on. And if you look at that on a network analyzer like Wireshark, what you see is individual packets going out, encrypted under TLS using decent encryption. But you can see the timing. If you can extract from those packets the times that packets were sent, then you know something about the keyboard timing of the user's fingerprints. And we can do some statistics on that. We can get the timing numbers, and we can estimate from the difference in timing, if we have a sample of users typing, the most likely characters that have been typed. And we can go a little bit further than that again. We could actually use some dictionaries. If we're lucky, dictionaries developed from the user's typing itself, and estimate that partner is quite a likely word to have been typed here. Now, what's going on here and what does it matter? Well, what we've got is a good encryption algorithm and protocol, but rubbish use of it, sending a single character at a time. And the security lesson really is the extent to which poor system design can compromise the value of good underlying mechanisms. This is not a complicated lesson on breaking cryptography. This is about good workmanship in using security mechanisms. Now, there's some distinctions here that it also highlights that I won't spend time on, which is the distinctions between data and information. And also, you can support using this kind of material your ordinary teaching information theory because it allows you to actually quantify information. How much is information as a character, how much information is related to the actual typing differences. This experiment, the algorithms are pre-canned for students because they're fairly complex. Most experiments are not like that. In most cases, the experiments we're producing, the student does something to illustrate a problem and then does something to show good security practice in fixing it. And actually that's something which is distinctive in these experiments generally as opposed to the normal capture the flag exercises. Most of the security exercises you'll find are challenging and interesting for students because they involve attacks. But they don't go as far then as explaining how to fix the problem from a good security practice perspective. So, plan practicals. What you'll find on our website, I'll show the link in a few seconds, is a number of general topics, and the idea is that the topics have been chosen to provide an indication of the kind of subject matter. They're not particularly modules, and different people will fit them into their curriculum in different ways. Issues which you might well be able to turn into learning points at some point and fit that into your courses. And then the practicals that we plan to address. The delivery mechanism, virtual machines, and significant documentation, worksheets and answer sheets. One of the things that we find here with our students is that taking answer sheets away that allow them to work through a practical again in their own time is actually extremely helpful in terms of lodging things in their brain and getting them to figure out exactly what's going on in the system. We get a lot of positive responses from the answer sheets that I give out on my own practicals. So, each of the groups of exercises is documented in that kind of way. The link to the website's at the bottom here, and it's also at the end of the slide set. And the kind of topics we're talking about dealing with are web programming, human factors, algorithms, information theory, and so forth. So about 7 or so key topics. And actually, in total, our requirements collection with industry ended up with about 30 possible practicals. I'll say a little bit more about that in a second. So far, we've got 3 practicals which have been packaged up and are distributed already to other universities for comment. we're happy for you to grab those and come and talk to us. Just give us a call and we'll provide them to you. We've got, at the moment, a student team that's just finished working as integrators in the summer, and they've produced a lot of draft practicals. 7 of those are currently in student testing, and 7 of them are complete development but not yet in testing mode. So we imagine that by the end of our year we'll probably have developed around 20 of these, which we hope will be of use to people around the UK. So just to finish, this is for the whole UK community, not just me or just York. And we're really happy to encourage people to get hold of us and say, can we look at these things? Our priorities are actually in this area or that area. This kind of documentation would be better or worse for us. We're still in a position where we can change those kind of things to a certain extent. So please contact us if you think that there's something that we've got here that might help you. Emails and web links below. The web link gives you the development status and a sample of one of the worksheets, but it doesn't give you the full practicals. You have to email us for that at the moment until we've got them properly reviewed. So that's me. I'm going to hand now back to Adrian, I think. Adrian?
Yes, thank you very much, Howard. And thank you indeed to Alastair and Nick as well. For those of you who are listening to us live, you'll be glad to know there are some resources that are linked to the presentations you've just seen. On the BrightTalk screen, there's a tab called Attachments, and underneath that, if you click on it, there is a video which, as Howard has said, covers his presentation in more detail. There's also a set of case studies. There's also a case study video which looks at University of Portsmouth in greater depth. And finally, the cybersecurity materials document that Nick referenced with all the web links and so on is also there. These are all downloadable right now, or if you are watching this offline, they are still available for you to download and to share. And indeed, if you are watching this online, it is being recorded, and about 5 minutes after we finish today's presentation, it will be available, and the web link, we can either send it to you if you ask us for it, or you can find this on our BrightTalk channel, and we would strongly encourage you to share this with your colleagues. It's only an hour of their time, so they can understand what's going on, the changes with the BCS, and how we're trying to approach this this whole area of cybersecurity within computing science curricula. So as you can see, we had some great case studies and some. I think one of the key messages that comes out of all of the presentations is this is designed to be flexible. This is not you being told how to teach. This is a set of resources, and now, of course, with the Cyber Practicals work funded by HEA as well coming through, tools by which you can teach security within your courses at the pace that you choose and in the style that you choose as well. We have about 10 minutes left, and I have a couple of slides. What I will do is, if any of you have a burning question, there is a questions tab as well on the screen. Please type your question in, and we will try and answer it before we finish at 2 o'clock. Indeed, and also, as I noticed that someone has added a rating to today's webcast, please do rate today's webcast and let us know if this sort of lunch and learn approach is something that you think will be of benefit to the wider community, academia and HEI and so on. So, in terms of just kicking off perhaps a quick discussion between the 4 of us before I wrap up, we've had a lot of we've done a lot of workshops under the CPHC banner. We've done a lot of presentations amongst ourselves. I suppose one of the key questions is, and perhaps all 3 of you, if you could have a share of thought about this, is what has been the major challenge that you've had to overcome? Has it been the courses are too full in Nick's case, or has it been something different? So perhaps if I can ask maybe Alastair just to chip in for a minute on that one.
A number of issues and around any change that need to be addressed. But perhaps an interesting one for colleagues is that trying to put a whole series of cybersecurity materials into a 20-credit module in the final year is a real challenge. There's so much that you can cover, and you've got to get that balance about it being useful material that students do at a final year level, as against just scratching the surface.
Lovely. And perhaps Howard, if you wouldn't mind, your thoughts here.
Yeah, well, lack of specialist teaching knowledge in this space. We're always scraping for good people that actually are experts, and how we compensate for that. And the usual one that we find, not just in teaching, but also in all project work that involves any kind of security or issues of that sort, which is that people have got their perceived roles in life, and if you talk to lecturers, then they see a huge amount of material they would love to be teaching, and they have a full course, and they have to be. It's a difficult decision for them to give up some of their material in order to find space for something different.
Indeed.
Yes, and of course lecturers are lecturers and researchers as well, so they have their own topics that they really wish to lecture on as well, because that's part of who they are as well.
And bear in mind that most of the cross-cutting disciplines, so not just safety, human factors, all of those kind of things, will say the same thing, which is this is a hygiene factor. You have to have it in the middle of your courses. So arguing that security is different, and in some senses it isn't, is actually quite difficult. And so the question is, the problem isn't so much adding a new module. The problem is injecting security into programming, into databases, into networks, all of those places.
And maybe, Nick, this is something you can quickly talk about as well.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is convincing staff to move the security from an add-on bit at the end of the unit to integrating it as and when it's needed, or required, sorry.
Good. Well, we have a couple of questions, actually, that popped up through already, so thank you very much. Obviously, we have tapped into a rich theme. The first question actually will take us back to BCS accreditation, if that's fine. The question is, how does the BCS accreditation, which is for computing science, relate to the GCHQ accreditation, which is much more focused?
Do you want me to take that one, Adrian?
Yes, Alastair.
Two completely different things. The BCS accreditation is a generic accreditation looking at mapping towards CITP and CNCSI. The cybersecurity aspect of that has been included as part of that CITP-CNG type approach. So it's one of the factors across a range of accreditation criteria. The GCHQ accreditation is very different. I know they're moving towards undergraduate, but it's mainly aimed at master's programs specifically, and they have a set of expectations that any program seeking to align to GCHQ accreditation has to meet, I think, between 75 and 80% of their curriculum expectations. So different thing, although confusingly both using accreditation as the activity.
Can I comment on GCHQ?
Yeah, please.
Of course, Howard.
Yeah. Well, GCHQ, first of all, would say they are certifying, not accrediting, and there is a difference apparently, although I'm not sure I properly understand it. What GCHQ, as is right, what they've done so far is to focus on courses that are developing security specialists. Perhaps the only thing I can add to this is that there are two things just being released from GCHQ in terms of calls for course certification at the undergraduate level. And one of those is certification of a cybersecurity undergraduate course. They use slightly cleverer words than this, but you'll have to excuse me. The other one is a course of computer science for cybersecurity, and I think you'll find that the latter is aimed at universities who are trying to embed security in a sensible way in computer science without teaching specialists. And so it might well be that universities such as Nick's that are embedding it in their courses may find that route is more useful than the specialist ones.
Yes, and thank you for actually bringing up the most recent GCHQ papers as well, Howard. You know, one of the things that we are talking about here today, and one of the things I think I'd like to bring back here is the fact that this is weaving cybersecurity into computing science, so that our computing science graduates, many of whom will end up working in IT functions, many of whom, or some of whom, will end up leading IT functions or cloud service providers, or take on the role of CIO or CTO, hopefully in the future, will have an understanding of security that they can apply in that wider IT context. This is not about us turning computer science students into cybersecurity experts. This is about enriching their degrees, enhancing their knowledge, so they have they are able to work in today's or fit into or get work in today's environment much easier than perhaps some of the stats in the past have shown. So with about 4 minutes to go, I think it's probably incumbent on me as the moderator to wrap up. So thank you very much to our audience for their questions. There's some moves forward. Over the last 6 months or so, again, CPHC and ISC Squared, we've actually been touring the UK, running university roadshows, talking about these principles. And indeed, I must thank Alastair and Nick and Howard, because they have participated in those roadshows and given up of their time to physically travel around the UK, meet colleagues and present on their topics. So we have gone through a process of identifying the importance of this, some of the hurdles which you've heard about today. They've been discussed in greater detail. And we've also discovered there's a real will to get involved, to make things happen. And one of the things that came clearly out of the CPHC meeting in Manchester, the annual general meeting of the CPHC, was really that we can do something here that, as an academic and industrial and professional body community, will really make a difference. And one of the things that has come out of that is the desire to see, can we develop communities of practice? And this is where we as ISC Squared will put our best foot forward. And this is about academic communities and industry communities meeting on a regular basis to share ideas, to converse with each other about how we can help each other. Many universities have this. Alastair mentioned this industrial board. This can be an extension of this. This could also be a community of practice where academics can share their findings of using, Howard's HEA-sponsored cyber practicals to improve them. And one of the things that we're looking for, and one of the things that we're looking to do, is to produce these lists of cybersecurity resources, to share best practice in terms of industry CVs, things to help the community. And I use that word in its widest sense. So students, postgraduate, undergraduate, academics, to really take this to the next level. We have the framework, we have the bare bones of teaching cybersecurity within computer science, but there is a huge amount of goodwill and a huge amount of knowledge out there. And we believe the communities of practice will be one way to help us share that for the benefit of us all. And that's sort of the call for action. So if you're interested in the communities of practice, please do get in touch with us at ISC Squared or through the CPHC, which is another route. And we will, again, as I say, put our best foot forward and help connect you with our networks and build those practices out, because we believe that's a great way of doing things. If it is, there you are. CPHC@bcs.org is the recommended email. and from that we can judge interest. I already have a number of individuals who are keen to form these communities of practice dotted around the country. So the more input and the more votes of confidence in this idea we get, the quicker we can get things off the ground. So with that, all it remains for me to do is thank again my three presenters. It's always a real privilege to run a meeting or a webcast with the academic community. I often sit here and wonder how on earth I got a degree many years ago, admittedly not in computing science, when I listened to the intelligence and erudition of the presenters. So thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure. And to the audience, this is a great moment where we can all of us build a real community for cybersecurity teaching, and I really hope that A, you found this webcast insightful and useful, and B, I really hope that it's motivated you to join us and form these communities of practice and really build on what is a world-leading and world-class cybersecurity education that we have at the moment. So thank you all, and wherever you are, have a great day, and I look forward to either meeting you in person or for you joining us on the next webcast.
Thanks, Adrian. Cheerio, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.